welcome back to my channel. My name's Ollie and this is Simply Stitchy. Now I recently asked a question on my community tab. If you haven't been over to have a look at that yet, I'll pop a link in the description box below for you. I ask all sorts of weird questions over on there and the answers that I get back never cease to surprise me. It's just amazing, and thank you ever so much to everybody that's actually contributed and left a comment on that tab. The recent question that I asked was, what feature do you think is most important on a sewing machine? And there was 4 different options. There was the zigzag stitch, reverse, the automatic needle threader and other. Coming in as the overwhelming winner was reverse with over 50% of the votes. A very close second was other with just over 30% of the votes. Unfortunately, I don't know what the other features that are most important on a sewing machine are because nobody actually let me know in the comments. If you did answer that particular poll, if you can pop back over and let me know in the comments which feature you think is the most important on a sewing machine, I would be really appreciative because I'm going to be bugged about that now. In joint third place was the automatic needle threader and something that was more than a little bit of a surprise to me, the zigzag stitch. They both tied with just 7% of the vote. The results to that poll did leave me more than a little bit gobsmacked, I've got to be honest. I was really expecting the zigzag stitch to do so much better. It's such a versatile stitch and it's a key to many of the features on modern day sewing machines. And that's the subject for today's video. We're going to be taking a look at one of the sewing world's unsung heroes, the zigzag. Come on, I'll show you why it's one of the most important features on a sewing machine. The star of today's video is going to be the Singer Simple. I was going to use Jerome until I remembered that he's actually got a UK plug instead of a US plug, so I can't actually plug him in at the minute because I can't find my little UK to US step-up converter. Joys of moving. The first thing that we're going to need to do is obviously thread the machine up. Now, the feature that I'm going to use to thread this machine up is possibly one of the ones that could have been covered in the other box on my poll, and that's the threading diagram that you find on a lot of modern day machines. They actually print the steps that you need to go through to thread your machine, so you don't have to bother getting the manual out. So let's get into it. It might be a little bit tricky for you to see the actual diagrams on the top of the machine because they're not actually that big, but what we're going to do is, if I grab this bit of thread for a minute, we're going to come from thread through these little guides round the back of this one here, because if you go around the front that's actually the threading for the bobbing. So we're going to slip that round the back of there. We're going to come down this groove. You've got like a little U-shaped picture, you follow that back up, you go through the take-up lever and then back down that same slot. And then what we're going to do, you've got a thread guide on the top of the needle bar right about there, and the next step is to go through the needle. When you're threading your sewing machine, always remember your presser foot needs to be up. Okay, but what I tend to do is when I get to the needle part, I always put the presser foot down, because what that does is it gets it out of the way so you can see the eye in the needle. Now I'm going to be doing that bit off camera because trust me, you really don't want to be sat there for a month of Sundays waiting for me to try and get the needle threaded. So I will be back in a minute. Okay, it is now through the needle, but what you need to remember to do now is lift your presser foot back up, because you don't want to start pulling the thread through while your presser foot's down, because that's going to put pressure on your tension discs, which is not good. Okay, so the pressure foot's back up. I can now put the thread in through the foot and pull it to the back of the machine. I've got some scrap fabric. I'm just going to pop it under the foot, put the press foot down. Okay, now we've got stitch selecting dial over here, and what we want to make sure is that we've got it set on a zigzag stitch. Now before you start messing with your stitch dial, what you need to make sure is that your needle is up. Okay, you don't want to start messing with your stitch dial with your needle still in the machine, because that's really not going to end well. Okay, so we've got it on a zigzag, so let's power up and see what it looks like. Hold your threads so they don't get pulled down into the feed dogs. You don't have to hold them tightly, just gently like that, and then find your foot pedal and off we go. Okay, now you might notice that I did a few different types of zigzag stitch there just to show you the variations that you can get. There's that one there is the actual standard zigzag. There you go. So basically that's the back. Need to adjust the tension in places by the look of it. It hasn't done too badly. Anyway, as you can see, the zigzag moves the needle from side to side to create that zigzag pattern. Now, zigzags didn't appear on sewing machines right from the very start. The original antique sewing machines, even the Singers from the 1850s, were just straight stitch only machines. And the patent for the very first zigzag sewing machine was actually filed in 1873, and it was filed by a lady. Her name was Helen Augusta Blanchard, and her very first zigzag machine was for buttonholes, and you can now find it in the National Museum of American History. Here's a picture of it. Not only was it the first zigzag machine, but it actually revolutionised sewing for the industrial market. Now, although these days modern sewing machines all have a zigzag stitch, it wasn't actually until the 1930s that the zigzag started appearing on domestic sewing machines. Now, there seems to be a little bit of confusion over which company introduced a zigzag to the home sewist first, and at what time. I found 4 companies who released a zigzag machine in the 1930s: Necky, Pfaff, Bernina and Singer. The problem is that there may be more. A quick note here, I did check the websites for both Brother and Jenome, but neither company's websites specifically mention what machine their first zigzag stitch was on or what year they introduced it. Necky, this one, their website shows that they developed their first zigzag stitch back in 1932, and it was the Necky Boo. B-U. I'm not sure how to say that bit. Let me know in the comments if you know if it's Boo or B-U. Anyway, in the same year, Pfaff introduced the Pfaff 130. This one. Singer's first sewing machine with zigzag capabilities was this one, the Singer 206, which was first introduced in 1936. Now, although the SingerSewingInfo.org website credits this particular machine as being Singer's first domestic with zigzag capabilities, it wasn't actually known as a zigzag machine. It was called a swing needle machine. Interestingly, the history section of Singer's website, singer.com, doesn't mention the 206, nor does the singerco.co.uk, which is the UK version of the Singer website. And I'm not entirely sure why that is. It could be because some 206 models were actually classed as industrial rather than domestic, and as zigzag was already a thing for industrials, maybe it just wasn't special enough to mention it on the domestic 206. Or maybe swing needles aren't proper zigzag machines. I don't know. If any of you lot out there know the answer to that question, let me know in the comments. But anyway, as far as Singer is concerned, they credit their first zigzag machines as the Slantomatics, which were introduced in the 1950s. The fourth company on the list of sewing machine manufacturers who introduced zigzags in the 30s is actually Bernina, and they have a website that shows that their first zigzag machine was launched in 1938. So we have a tie between Necky and Pfaff. Although, to be honest with you, it could just so easily be any other company. I think they all kind of jumped on the zigzag bandwagon as soon as the patent that belonged to Helen Blanchard expired. If any of you find anything out there that shows any other company introducing a zigzag to the domestic market in the 1930s, let me know in the comments below. We're only talking domestic. I know that the industrials already had zigzags before the 1930s, so we're looking at manufacturers, domestics from the 1930s. So what's so special about a zigzag stitch? What is it that it enables you to do? Well, on some machines, manual machines in particular, it allows you to set the position of your needle. So instead of it always being in the middle, you can move it to the left or the right, which comes in useful sometimes, particularly if you're doing straight stitching and you need to get right up close to the very edge of your fabric for top stitching, for instance. You can use a zigzag by itself to sew down the very edge of your fabric to stop your fabric from fraying. In fact, when I first started learning to sew, that is how we were taught to sew. Before we did anything at all with the pattern pieces that we'd cut out, we used to have to go around every single one of them with a zigzag stitch. And you can combine that zigzag stitch with a straight stitch to form what's known as an overlock or an over edge stitch. You can sew knits or stretchy fabrics. The zigzag gives more flexibility to the fabric, so instead of the straight stitch, which is quite rigid, getting pulled as the stretchy fabric gets pulled and breaking, the zigzag will give and create better seams on those types of materials. You can also do buttonholes. Now this machine is a 4-step buttonhole, so you have to move the dial for each stage of the buttonhole. On computerised machines, you'll find that you get 1-step buttonholes, which means you just push a button and the machine will do each stage when it's ready to move on to that particular phase. Talking about buttonholes, you can also sew on buttons with a machine that's got zigzag capabilities. If we go back to stretchy fabrics, a zigzag is incredibly useful if you're sewing in elastic, because elastic is one of the stretchiest materials that you can get, and you need the zigzag to be able to cope with the pulling. Another thing a lot of people tend to forget with zigzag is you can actually use it to darn things with your sewing machine. I recently fixed the inside of a pocket on a pair of Tees shorts. Here it is, and I actually used the over edge stitch, but you can just as easily just use the zigzag by itself. And even if you've got 2 pieces of fabric, like leather for instance, that you just want them joined edge on edge instead of having like a seam, you can use the zigzag to create that flat seam. You've got hemming. If you want to hem your trousers or your pants or a skirt on a sewing machine, you can use the blind hem stitch, which is a variation of a zigzag. You can do bar tacks with a zigzag, so that's where you need areas that need reinforcing, like the edge of your pockets for instance, and you just do a really thin spaced zigzag just to give it that extra stability. Twin needle stitching. If you've got a zigzag capable machine, then you are guaranteed to have enough space in both your foot and your feed dogs to be able to fit 2 needles or a twin needle. And twin needles are incredibly useful for sewing tricky fabrics like fleece, because it gives you the stability of 2 lines of straight stitching on the top, and the bobbin will create the zigzag on the underneath. You've also got decorative stitches, although there isn't that many stitches on a Singer Simple. If you look at, as if by magic, Jerome, he's got all sorts of different decorative stitches. He's got little hearts, he's got curves, he's got lots of buttonholes. So there you have it, the zigzag stitch. Such an unassuming little stitch, and yet it enables you to do so much in your sewing. I hope you enjoyed today's video. If you did, give it a thumbs up, and why not check out some of the other videos that I've got on my channel by using these links coming up any minute now, or try the links that I've got in the description box below. Whatever video you go and check out next, I hope to see you back here for the next one. And why not take this opportunity to subscribe? There's a little button just down there, and click the little bell so that YouTube will send you a notification next time I upload another video. In the meantime, whatever you're sewing it with, embrace your creativity and have fun. Thank you ever so much for watching, and I'll see you next time. Bye for now.